And join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I am Lynette Kelsey, Police Judge. Rob Connell.
Here.
Keith Holmes.
Here.
John Jennings.
Here.
Paul Hinton is not here yet. Mary Smith.
Here.
Tim Allen.
Here.
Great. Agenda approval. That item you've got on your table is actually just additional information about agenda item 3. So, and then is, I assume the police report is just info. Okay, so any additions to the agenda? All right. I would entertain a motion to accept the agenda.
There's one downstairs.
And Paul has just joined us. It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor say aye.
I'm sorry, that moved and seconded.
Sorry.
Thank you. As presented.
As
Yep.
presented,
Thank
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Audience business. Members of the audience have 5 minutes to present any matter of interest not already on the agenda. Do we have anyone here for audience business? Seeing none, we will carry on. The payables you have are from August 16th to September 5th, 2019. Any comments, questions?
I had a question.
Okay.
Just the plan tools, what project was that plan tools? Amount for? Plan tools, land use review fees,
It's numerous projects, John.
just a bunch?
Yeah, there's like 4 different projects.
Okay. And just curious about the $76 toilet seat.
Is it fur?
Well, someone wrecked the toilet seat down at the viewing station. They ripped it off and broke it. And to get it to fit with the risers that we have, you have to order it from the same company. And yes, well, it was $59 plus shipping.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Is it fur?
it's gold.
Should be a better nails.
It's gold plated.
I was just curious. That's a lot for a toilet seat.
Yeah.
That's all I had.
Okay.
Thanks for asking.
Well, I'm on the sewer board. I mean, it's.
Any other comments or questions? Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the budget for the period 8/16/2019 to 9/5/2019.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the payables from August 16 to September 5th, 2019 as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next we have the minutes of the August 27th, 2019 regular scheduled meeting. Any questions or comments?
I'll make a motion.
Whoa.
On page 2,
Yes.
under the Design Review Commission appointment, I'm not quite sure, in bold, that last paragraph, I'm not sure it reads the way we should want it to read. Isn't it just that we appointed Nancy
Just
Gold to the
Nancy.
Design Review Commission, period?
Yep.
Yeah, I need to delete
Strike
Cindy Martin,
Cindy, yeah,
John.
okay.
That was a mistake.
Anybody have anything else? In the paragraph on Bob Orsatti's presentation, the proximity of Bighorn to Lagoon is switched. I don't know whether, did you figure out whether he misspoke or whether?
That,
Is that in
I
the-
did get that from some written literature, but
Okay.
wrong, I mean, you know.
Okay, because it's, the lagoon is actually to the east of the Bighorn Crossing, but the Bighorn Crossing is on the western shoreline of the lagoon, so. And then in the ordinance number 3 portion, the motion, I think, should have the words on second reading.
Oh, yeah. And I normally don't do that, but I can start doing that if you want me to.
Let's go ahead, because we usually do the on first reading and
I
then
mean,
it's
the
just.
first reading, yeah,
Yeah.
but normally I just say move to approve the ordinance.
I don't know why.
I can put adopt too, but
Okay,
I can always add second reading, that's easy.
okay. Anybody have anything else? Go, Rob.
Ready? Motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the August 27th, 2019 meeting as amended. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. New and unfinished business, we have ordinance number 4, series 2019. We have a public hearing and second reading on that ordinance. Was Gary gonna be here?
He was going to be here, but he
Okay.
was running down late in the day and coming back up, so
Okay, all right, we'll carry on.
he's the one that has majority of this, but
True,
he did make the changes that was talked about last time, although there was a lot of discussion, but not much. So he was going to ask 2 specific questions on that. And I don't have those in front of me.
Do you want to switch them?
we could postpone it till later.
Yeah, you can just reopen them.
Okay, well, we haven't opened the public hearing,
Oh,
so
I see.
let's bump this one, and move on to. Timing's good.
About time.
Give him a minute to catch his breath.
I tripped on that first step.
Is that first step loose out there?
It's loose,
All right.
Keith, you
All
broke it.
right, okay,
Call Thursday.
we're on
We're on.
ordinance number 4.
Okay, good. I know about that.
Okay,
Sorry.
Oh, no.
You've got, this is extracurricular for you. Yeah.
Do you need a pen?
No,
Okay.
I'm good. What do you want me to tell you about?
yeah,
Since last time?
we've just hit there, and we're gonna move it to later in the agenda if.
Your timing was impeccable.
Well, I can tell you that the key aspects of this ordinance based on the board's discussion last time were to make 2 separate kinds of requirements. One for individual residential trash containers and one for dumpsters. And the line that the board chose to draw, and which is reflected here, is that for residential trash containers, they're not required to be wildlife resistant if you put it out in the morning. And I forget which, we talked a lot about what time in the morning, we can revisit that. But if you want to put it out the night before, then the ordinance provides that you've got to have a wildlife resistant trash container, and that's going to cost you money to have the luxury of putting out the night before like I do. But that's a choice that individual residents can make. On dumpsters, the requirement of the ordinance is that they be wildlife resistant, and that could come at a cost. So the last thing the board talked about last time we looked at this was, okay, what kind of period of time should we give people, what kind of grace period should we give people to comply? The way the ordinance is set up, look at section 3 on page 4 of the ordinance, effective date. And at the moment, I plug in 6 months from the date of adoption. I'm not sure we had talked about a specific number, but that was sort of a plug number for me. It's really kind of a policy work policy choice for the board to
to think about. You could divide that up more and say, okay, the individual trash rules apply right away. Since it won't cost you anything to put your trash out in the morning, you could make that immediately effective. If you say 6 months from now, the bears will be asleep by then, and maybe back away, who knows. So you could say that section's applicable right away, the dumpster section is applicable in X number of months, so you can divide that up into July. That's a thumbnail sketch of the ordinance.
And I noticed you also put in references to the earlier chapter in that
Yeah.
section of the code.
Yeah,
To
we have,
refer.
exactly. We have a really terse and short section on elsewhere in the code that I really just made a cross-reference to. This structure about, wildlife-resistant trash cans, the ability to distinguish between residential and dumpsters is a lot more complex than that other part of the code, and it just didn't make sense to graph this onto that earlier section. So,
Jerry, on section 2, severability, should board of trustees actually be board of selectmen?
it should. Thank you. So a couple of policy choices, obviously, on violations. The first violation you'll notice is courtesy ticket, and then the second and third violations go up in cost.
Actually, what we should probably do is open the public hearing
Yep.
and take public comment if there is any. And so I would open the public hearing now, if there are people who want to say anything.
Does the PD have anything to want to weigh in at all on this?
No, I agree with what we have. I agree with keeping and maintaining the restrictions on the dumpsters. That is the bear-proof dumpsters, and meeting the particular standards of the Wildlife Foundation. And we relaxed that a little bit with the personal containers, but I've also seen around town, there's been improvement with that. There's been latches, straps, ropes, securing those personal canisters, or the canisters issued by the state Timberline. So there's been improvement around town with that. So I think that'll work for us as well. And then I'm just here now to answer any questions that may arise throughout, any other section of the ordinance. Because this is, while we've gone from 0 to a particularly restrictive ordinance, excuse me, I think that once we traverse that initial rocky ground, I think we'll see dramatic improvement in the wildlife issues that have been worsening this past year. So that's what I have to say at this point.
Okay, thank you. All right. If there's nobody from the public who wants to make comment, we can close the public hearing. Any other comments from the board? Yes, Tim.
I was the one, I think, that brought up the delay for the dumpsters, just because I wasn't sure if the suppliers or the companies that service the dumpsters could get them all bear-proofed and, right away. So I'd like to make the comment that since people can put their normal trash cans out after 5 a.m., they should do that as soon as this is enacted. The dumpsters, I think, I don't know how many months, 6 months, would be like, everybody has to have them changed by then. So they could start working on them and get them either modified or replaced out. So that was my thought.
I think if somebody, puts a strap around their dumpster in an effort to try to keep the bear out, that's like a clear, present effort to try to prevent an infiltration.
Because I think last time.
Shouldn't that consideration be given to a, homeowner?
Well, I think both Randy and John have both stated that the enforcement of this is going to be take quite a bit of education. So it isn't gonna be like, we're waiting for you not to do this. There's gonna be some education involved, there's gonna be, obviously notification saying, hey, you're causing a problem. And this is an ordinance that addresses that problem, and you realize this is going to be coming.
Well, to kind of, back his point, from 0 to, 60, shouldn't there be some massage in this? In other words, through education, should we take somebody, maybe from Denver, who doesn't understand the nature of wildlife, and then bring them up to speed in terms of, hey, if you're gonna own a property up here, this is something you ought to consider. Because a lot of them would be, absolute, their eyes would be wide. Well, of course, I'd be happy to comply, I just never thought of that. But it's, I just wonder if there's like a,
So let me just go over, we can start the gas, go over some of the efforts we're making as the police department is, number one, once the ordinance is passed, we intend on making flyers that really simplify the ordinance into like a one page. And we're just, right now, we're ruminating on the distribution, but we'll put a stack downstairs on the counter. Some people come in, they can take a copy, and it'll go over, it'll basically go over what's required of them, and in simplistic terms. If we can mail it out, we'll mail it out. We don't mind waiting, we've come this far, to next season in making sure, and before we start looking at dumpsters and do they meet the requirement, but we're also sending letters out to the waste management companies licensed to do business in town of the new ordinance, and we plan to mail that out as soon as the ordinance is passed. And it goes over the guidelines of the ordinance and what's required of them. Now, I know Timberline has ordered, I'm going to say roughly 40 bear-proof dumpsters, and I think I've seen some of those in town already. So they seem to be on board, but we're going to issue the letters to all the companies, and so that they understand what's required of them. If they're going to do business in town, it's contingent upon them following our ordinances. And again, I think once we cover this rocky ground a little bit and everybody's on board, we're going to see a dramatic difference and improvement in the community and the wildlife, and that not getting so mixed together that somebody's going to get hurt one day. That's what this ordinance is aimed to do, is aimed to stop a problem that's worsening and not merely a Band-Aid solution to it.
Thank you.
And to speak to your point, I think the ordinance being built on first step is a warning, and then the next step, if there's a second violation, is not a huge fine, but it goes up to get their attention if they haven't gotten the message.
First warning, don't you think, I think that what he's given is like an outline of the ordinance. I think there ought to be maybe a supplemental piece on, you're in the mountains now. This is an element maybe you didn't have to deal with.
We can make a film.
A hologram. A hologram. But something educational that'll further the point and make them all of a sudden in a way that will educate them rather than warn them.
Well, and I get what you're getting at, but that's not something that you really build into an ordinance, is the education piece. The education piece is the public outreach, and that's what you do to soften the blow, and it sounds like it's already being thought of, so I'm glad you brought that up. So
We haven't really built that into any of our other ordinances.
No. So, yes.
So on page 3, A2, where it says fail to remove and properly dispose of any spillage, blah, 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 blah. Do we have a time frame on that? Because to me, that leaves it wide open that we've got stuff all over the place, and there doesn't seem to be any bite to how quickly someone needs to clean it up. Common sense is always appreciated. However, I think it needs to be tightened up where there's a time frame on that. And then I would just like to make a comment about the effective date. I appreciate what Tim has suggested. I think 6 months is a little bit too long. 90 days. We're not just talking bears, we were concerned with this ordinance for wildlife in general, and just because the bears may or may not go away, or we don't know what the, winter temperature is gonna be like, and if they're gonna be foraging for food or not. It just, I can see it being put off by too many waste companies, and not adhering to what we're really trying to bring in. So I would be more comfortable with something like 90 days. If Timberline is pulling it together and getting 40 dumpster proper covers and everything like that, I think the other places can, certainly be on that same track line. And then if there's an exception, maybe, the police are dealing with that or whatever, but, or if they've shown good faith and it's like, oh no, wait, we need one more week. But otherwise, we're talking, February? And I think we can have a lot of continued issues between now and
I think
February.
most of those waste companies too have people that can do the modifications needed, so even if they can't order them or get them in time, they can make modifications that will at least help, the situation. I think I remember last week, or last meeting, Randy said, the type of dumpsters that have the bar that go up over the lids would be approved. So I would think that they could do things like that, or maybe that would even allow the chain to go across the lids with a padlock or something like that.
We just don't want them to maintain plastic bids. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
We've seen bears jumping down on the lid with the
Till
bar.
it collapses.
The bar's in front, and it does collapse. So there are improvements that people can make with plastic lids using plywood, but these companies aren't going to do that because that's kind of a do-it-yourself, fix it. It's just they're gonna be required to have the bear proof first. It's gonna solve the problem.
Other comments?
I'm good with making 90 days. I think that seems like enough time for them to get up to speed.
I agree.
90 days on the whole ordinance.
Yeah.
I had a question for you, Jerry. On page 3, number 1, it speaks to only rigid containers. However, don't we,
That's kind of,
the pliable are mentioned down in the definition of wildlife resistant refuse container.
right.
And I didn't know if,
Here's where that's headed. That's garbage bag. So, you can't put your trash out in just a garbage bag. It's what, that's kind of almost an independent violation. If you're just putting the trash out in your kitchen garbage bag, then that's not rigid. Plastic containers are rigid. It's not wildlife resistant.
Okay, and-
Put your stuff in that and put it out at 5 a.m., you're good.
okay.
But
At least the crows can, things like that can't get in.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. And, I think that's something you probably want in any event. If people are just putting out trash even at 5 a.m. in garbage bags, that's not very helpful. That's why that's there.
Okay.
Can I get a sense on the effective date, what I would do when you get around to a motion, I can articulate, but that instead of taking effect upon adoption and posting, really, we just kind of back and say, shall take effect 90 days after adoption and posting?
Doesn't it take effect immediately, but they have a 90-day
Grace
period to comply with the
Dumpsters.
Okay.
and what about the rigid, well,
Well, you have the rigid.
I mean, even the 5 a.m. piece and everything like that, we want
Right.
to adhering to that, like you said, pretty much
Yeah,
immediately.
you want to do that right away. Okay, so it's just the dumpsters that you want to put out there in 90 days?
Yeah, just to give them a little time so that they,
WRDEs and
I'm just, I don't know, I just think that the waste haul companies can't change it all like that.
It's gonna take an hour or so for each one.
If that's the case, then what we do is, in section 3, it takes effect upon adoption, posting, et cetera, except the provision of new code, and I'd say 822.040A6, which is the WRDE requirement, shall not take effect until 90 days.
Well, it still takes effect now, but they have a 90-day grace period to comply. If we don't want it to take effect 90 days from now, and then they have another 90 days to comply,
Well,
right?
no, I mean, once it's in effect, it's in effect, so that it's sort of how you want to articulate it, but if you say the requirement of a WRDE doesn't take effect for 90 days, that gives people, time to get their WRDEs, and 91 days from now, it'll be in effect. There's not another 90.
Okay.
Would it be simpler just to say everything goes into effect, and then the people with dumpsters that are serviced by waste companies that haven't got them replaced yet or something, and then they get a little leniency on the enforcement part?
And it's not
For that short period of time?
So let me explain this to you. We have a very powerful tool that we use, and it's discretion. So we will use discretion. Now, we're coming up into the season where bears are going to hibernate. So, December, January, and we're still seeing, after 90 days, before they come out of hibernation, that's additional education we can do that in person. To gain compliance. It's outside of the pamphlets that we draw up, it's outside of the notifications that we mail out, and try to get to gain this compliance, and I think that's going to work. So we don't just say, we have an ordinance, we have a violation, therefore we must cite. We don't do that. We issue a lot of warnings for ordinance violations, and that's just what we'll continue to do. And then when it becomes, right before it becomes a problem is when we'll, if we have to issue summons, we'll issue a summons. So.
It isn't hard at all to say that the ordinance is effective immediately, so no putting trash out in the garbage bags and start putting your trash out at 5 o'clock unless you've got it life resistant. That doesn't hurt anyone immediately because it doesn't cost anyone anything to comply with that. And then to say that the WRDE dumpster requirement doesn't take effect for 90 days, then as a part of the education effort, I'm sure the police department will be saying, hey folks, 90 days from now is, whatever it is, January, December 1st, and on the 91st day, it'll take effect, but they can either, they can continue to do one of 3 things. Exercise discretion, just issue a warning, issue a courtesy violation as the code, as this ordinance provides, or issue a ticket. So, that's easy to do in terms of effective date language.
How's everybody feel about that?
Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
When you're ready to take a motion, I can tell you what it might be. But there's not much really. The only change would be in section 2.
Right.
Replace board of trustees with board of selectmen. And in section 3, the ordinance shall take effect upon adoption, posting, et cetera, except the provisions of new code 822.040A6 shall not take effect until, what's 90 days from roughly now, December 10th? Yep.
Stays at 9.
219. That's easy. And just amend section 3 to say that, and you're good.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Ordinance number 4, Series 2019, an ordinance amending Title 8, Health and Safety of the Georgetown Municipal Code by the addition of a new chapter 8.22 concerning nuisance wildlife and garbage containers as amended. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Agenda item number 2 is Dewberry, the Dove program.
Police Judge Cassie and members of the board, this is outreach and verification effort, sorry. I always forget that acronym. On the Dove program, specifically their discussions with CDPHE and getting that approved. So it wasn't part of, it was sort of and sort of not a part of the original contract.
What did they do?
Well, it's because of the timing within the chlorination tank up at the water
Right.
treatment plant. That was a question because of the 2 different skids.
Contact time?
Yes, contact time.
Got it.
So that was the major,
Because that second skid's closer to the contact chamber?
no, it was some other minor
So-
issue to start with.
That's all right, I'll ask.
And then they started,
Got it.
they went round and round. And it was CDPHE finally came to
Who'd you talk to at CDPHE?
SDHE.
Tyson?
Sounds like various people
Because it was-
because of change of,
It wasn't Tyson at the start, I don't think.
I said something about 3 different times, just their contacts changed.
Did you? At another location?
We did, we went through it at Indian Hills and, it was a measure of contact time with chlorine and
Right.
generally that's what the major issue is when it comes to Dove. And that's the, disinfected, they're verified.
And we were stopped short of having to install another thing within the chamber up
With the mixing tank?
there, in the mixing tank.
So were they proposing a tank with like media in it?
Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
And that, we got away from that, but it took some discussions.
looks like a lot. I guess my main concern was throughout that process that Dewberry had going through getting approval from CDPHE, were they communicating
Oh, yeah.
regularly with you and Ryan? Okay. As long as that piece wasn't just surprise at the very end, so, okay, good.
So you've dealt with engineers as well?
Couple of times. And I guess I was also trying to make sure that the engineer has, this wasn't like brand new territory. They've done this for other clients in cities before, right? So it wasn't like we were paying for their learning curve.
No.
Okay.
As far as that.
No, Dewberry's actually a pretty big name in the water industry.
Figured as much, but if we're paying for learning curve, I don't expect to be charged full price.
Right.
So, okay. Anybody else have any questions, comments? So I would assume we need to approve that change order.
And I'll move to approve the change order for the contract with Dewberry Engineers for the amount of $7,530.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the change order for the contract with Dewberry Engineers for the amount of $7,530. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. So, agenda item number 3, you had some information in your packet and then you've got a supplemental just additional information that Ryan thought we all needed to know about, the sand filters and metal and organics removal that was on the table.
So I have a question for you, Trent.
Yes, sir.
Is any of the sand removal, drilling the filter and the sand, is that at all included in this change order?
The filter itself, we are working with the manufacturer, and there's about a $6,000 additional cost that the manufacturer's going to bear regarding the filter itself. As far as drilling, this is more regarding, and that's why Ryan's explanation is a little bit better than what I had from Velocity, was regarding the connection to the wall. And through a concrete wall that's at the base of that filter. So the filter itself is going back to the manufacturer. This is the connection to the waste stream.
For the conduit and all of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there's two change orders. One is electrical regarding conduits, a little bit different conduits for a certain area. But then for Velocity itself, it was a change order regarding drilling through the wall to get to the where the waste is removed.
Okay.
Do we have anything from Velocity or the supplier of the filter, if it's not the same, with regards to any warranty, because they had to drill out the missing holes and
The
everything else?
warranty stayed in place according to the manufacturer. They gave
But down the
instructions to
line-
Velocity.
Down the line, when there's an issue and they're like, oh, somebody drilled out these holes, this isn't the way it was supposed
No,
to
we
be.
had a communication from the manufacturer, so
So
I don't have that with you.
At least you check, that's all that matters.
Yeah,
Just to make sure that
As long as
coming
you have
that
it on
nice.
a piece of paper.
Huh?
As long as you have it on a piece of
on a
paper.
sticky note, on a sticky note.
Sticky over, that's a piece of paper, that's a piece of paper.
Operations manual on page
Whose initials
168.
are these? So,
Yeah, what do you feel, Paul?
any other questions? Would somebody like to?
I'll make a motion
Thank you.
to approve the wastewater treatment plant change order.
In the amount,
Number 2 and number 3.
It's all written down there for you if you have it.
I didn't see that on
And
the.
we have cheat sheets for all that.
I was like, actually go look at I move to approve the change orders number 2 and number 3 in the contract with Velocity for the amount of $16,226 for the wastewater treatment plant improvements.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded to approve the change order for the contract with Velocity in the amount of $16,226 for the wastewater treatment plant improvements. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed?
But I didn't have reading glasses on at the time.
You did very well.
I know.
There you go.
Without a net.
We
Good
would
job.
like the tone and the pauses, you know. that-
Agenda item number 4, Town Hall roof.
I've been,
Quit looking up, you make me feel.
I bet we'll approve this one.
the town hall roof needs to be replaced.
Can I just take a staff recommendation?
Well, you guys know this better than I do, so you go ahead.
Is there evidence of needing a replacement?
I have picked up several shingles in the parking lot, so you probably have too
Yeah.
that time of year. But the people who did the work on the bell tower, which was a grant project, said that we need to get the roof replaced before next winter. We've been contacting roof companies and we've only gotten one response, so
Well, it's mid-September.
I recommend approval, so,
Gotta get done.
and they can get it scheduled here shortly, so.
I have one question for you.
Yes, sir.
On the under costs, it looks like number 1 and number 2 are identical. Are they supposed to both be charged there?
I will check with them on that.
Okay.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Uh-huh.
The one thing I did have them redo, because it was recommended because it came up in a DRC conversation, because I was asking them if I needed to go get permission. They mentioned to have 50-year shingles. So the first quote I had was not, it was just 30-year shingles. So I went back to them and got 50-year shingles, which is a higher wind load. And it was a little higher price, but I'll check regarding this. Thank you.
Higher weight, is
It may be that there's 2 layers of composition shingles. Notice that the item number 3, the wood shingle, is the same square feet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, as you
Or you might have
know,
layers.
sometimes,
could be,
you know, that's what people just did, they put them in a layer.
yeah.
Yeah.
Those bastards.
I just thought it was worth asking.
Sure.
I was also curious as to why numbers 4 and number 17 look the same, except the area that they cover is different, so.
Right.
And this is all our money, this isn't any kind of grant money, correct?
Correct.
So that we're not,
We can't find anybody to roof this place that, closer to Denver? Really?
This is actually a company that, well, it may be on Denver, but they have an office in Evergreen. So,
well, but
You know, I'm just saying.
this is all within the historical aspect of the,
Oh, do we?
yes, that was the reason to talk with DRC about it.
Well-
And then we are gonna add gutter on the side, and the correct gutter that be appropriate for,
Where's the downspout?
and then.
What kind of gut?
This time of the downspout?
Half mile?
Yeah.
What gauge?
Drainage.
So,
okay,
okay.
Clint Hannon's too.
Do we feel that this is a good price, since we did not get any other
I know.
proposals?
I tried like the dick, and
I can't.
you know, I thought I was gonna have 2 other bids, but it
Kinda is.
turned out to be true.
sounds like it's in the ballpark.
It's, yeah, it's.
I'll do it for 35,000.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I'll do it for 35.
Well, I move to approve the proposal from T. Hackenbarth Roofing for replacement of the town hall roof for the amount of $15,062.29.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the T. Hackenbarth roofing proposal to replace the town hall's roof. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Clear Creek County Complete Count Committee, donation request, and I believe George is here for that.
Yeah. Hi, thank you.
Join us, thank you.
It's been long enough anyway, and I've been meaning to come and introduce myself. Hello. So yes, you probably had a chance to read the letter. So we have asked Idaho, the county has put up $5,000 as well. We've asked Idaho Springs and Georgetown to do $5,000. And then I think we've asked Empire for 1,000 and Silver Point for 500, because, you know, they have smaller tax bases. Yes. So that's sort of the first request, is for some financial support. The idea is we're applying for a grant from the state of Colorado to fill in the gap. Maybe you guys are aware or not aware that the federal government has cut the funding for the census about by 50% from what they did in 2010.
10.
Yeah, 10 years ago. And so that's a problem. So local governments are trying to fill in the gap, and the state has a grant program to help as well. The idea with these funds is for us to hire a complete count coordinator, so that currently what we have is we have a complete count committee that is a lot of county staff time. I'm on it, and then I know the city of Idaho Springs has been sending some representatives, as well as we're trying to get like Loaves and Fishes and the library district and just all of these organizations together. And then the coordinator, of course, will manage that effort. And what we're going to do is support the census by making sure that people know about it, overcoming any cynicism associated with being counted by the government, and all of that. So that's our intent. So in addition to the request for funding support, and this isn't in the letter, but part of the reason I'm here is because I want to augment that by also asking if one of you in this room or somebody outside of this room could be delegated to represent Georgetown on this complete count committee, and help us have some more muscle to make sure that we get this done. And you guys know how important this is. Every additional body we count in this county brings about $2,300 a year, from whether you're talking about funding for the school district, housing vouchers, housing affordability vouchers, all the TANF and human services money that we get. There's just a lot of ways. St. Mary's Glacier right now, up in that community, they're trying to fix their wastewater plant because their income is overestimated, probably like yours is as well. They don't have access to some federal funding that would have solved the problem. So, I'm going to shut up. I'm going to talk too long. But that's the ask. So thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
The amounts that you have asked the municipalities and the county to give, are they proportionate to the population that's in those areas, or did you just divide the number up?
They are not proportionate. I mean, Idaho Springs has roughly double the population of Georgetown. And we asked 5,000 of each municipality. And I don't really know how that decision was arrived at. We probably should have asked Idaho Springs for $10,000.
It's not too late, is
There
it?
you go.
Well, I'll tell them, I'll go to their next meeting, and I'll say, Georgetown said yes to the 5, but they think you should double up.
Yeah.
That's great.
Or we can do 2,500.
Have you gotten the nod from any of these other agencies that they're coming up with I'm sure this is kind of your first,
Yeah.
take, but
Clear Creek County has committed. Idaho Springs has committed. It's not formally in their budget yet. The idea, I believe, is that, well, if you look at the timeline that's in your packet, you'll see that we are, if we get the funding, we will use these funds to pay for the first couple months of that position, because the funding from the grant won't be available until later in 2020. So that's why that's what these funds will do, is enable us to have that complete count coordinated for an extra couple of months.
so has anyone said no? I guess that would be easy.
Nobody has said no.
Okay.
Idaho Springs said yes, Silver Plume said yes last night. Have not yet heard back from Empire.
Well, but you also have the mine and the school district, and I was just curious how they,
The school district is a hard no. There are some legal complications there. And I am not aware of, I think it's,
Wasn't the CCEBC and Henderson Mines put up money for it?
I know that they have been asked, but I don't know if they have committed.
I had a chat with Matt Taylor today, and he was under the understanding that they had said yes, both of them. But I also, in my discussion with Matt, who is on the committee as well, he's the head of the GIS department, the letter from the commissioners stated that this was to be worked into the 2020 budget, but it sounded from all the information that's in the rest of it that because you're trying to cover these two positions before the grant money comes in, that it would be really helpful if we actually could come up with the funds this year rather than wait until next year. So I'm just clarifying?
I think you're correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that we can make it work if the funds aren't available until 2020, but
Okay.
ideally, I wish I had a better answer for you, because I
Okay.
don't know, it could be that we're safe. I mean, the CCEDC and the Henderson come through, and the county comes through, I mean, that sounds like, I doubt, $15,000 for a couple of months should be able to
Okay.
cover a position, right?
What makes these two tracks that are identified in here so difficult to,
There are a few factors that impact Sugar Creek. They talk about aging populations. I think in the municipalities, I think that's where you have a big concern. They also, in the municipalities, another thing they're doing this year is they are not mailing census documents to PO boxes. So in addition to that, they're asking everybody to complete online if they can. And we all know about internet access.
That's all of us.
This is problem.
Yeah, and then rural communities in general are identified as hard to count.
better count John now.
Isolated.
People right under
Give me my cell phone.
So yeah, those are some of the reasons.
Yeah, the PO box thing was kind of a mystery to me because you possibly all got this in your PO boxes, but this is a little postcard that was mailed by the U.S. Census Bureau, looking for people to apply for census jobs. It's like, well, if you phrase it as you can't mail to post office boxes, yes, you can.
I just did.
So.
Why that decision was made, somebody might want to count people in the rural areas a little more than in the municipalities, but
This is so weird.
I can't imagine that.
Makes no sense.
So, thoughts from the board?
I think it's really important to get that count in,
Certainly is.
you know, and it's painful, $5,000 seems like a painful amount, but it'd probably come back to us and,
Being properly counted.
properly counted, yeah. Get the numbers right, hopefully get more numbers.
Well, more money, more is more money.
I guess I had a little bit of an issue with Georgetown being lumped in with larger populations, and our budget is quite a bit smaller than both the county and Idaho Springs. So it's a larger percentage that we're being asked. So I don't think it's an impossible amount, but
What's Mary say about it?
I think that 5,000 is a bit much considering Idaho Springs is asked the same as far as in the county as well. I'm curious whether or not, though, it needs to come out of the 2020 budget or 2019, and that also kind of makes a difference for
Which would be better.
us.
Well, the other thing that could happen is it could be part now and part in 2020.
Easier for 2020.
As you were saying, George, regarding for the workers for the last, before it starts, but before the grant reimbursement would start. But that isn't all in 2019. It would be also at the beginning of 2020.
Yes.
And it could be split between 2019 and 2020 budgets. Would be one way for us to handle it easier.
I guess my concern is using the town's money to help with the count outside of the town. I don't know if that's appropriate or not. It didn't seem too bad, but it doesn't seem right either, so I don't know.
Use municipal money to, for the federal effort, right?
Pardon me?
Using municipal money to afford a federal effort.
Yeah.
I do think that there are hard to count populations within your borders. And I also think that counting people outside your borders still helps bring funding within your borders.
Well, if it needs revenue.
And we all know the specter of the Henderson line. The reason that I have decided to really kind of bird dog this effort is because I see this as a way over for it to do our best to secure our tax base, and get our tax money back from the federal government that we're paying, to help with that sort of uncertain fiscal future that we are facing.
So I guess that's the flip side. What's worst case scenario if this project isn't undertaken as spelled out here by the county? You know, trash the whole thing, trash the grant, trash all the municipalities. What's the county's look or take on that?
I don't know how, some county staff, people who've been involved, Matt Taylor and Pat Luker, would respond to that question. I know for myself, I would, try to mobilize a volunteer effort, to a peer-to-peer volunteer effort, similar to what you'd see out of a political campaign, to make sure that we overcome this, these challenges. Because, what is it, we know the depth of our resolve, right? Individually.
So 10 years ago, this didn't happen like this.
10 years ago, I don't know if there was a complete count committee or not. And I know we didn't do as bad as some other counties. If you look at the statewide map, we were counted a little better than some other census tracts.
I've attended several of the meetings of the Complete Count Committee, and there are groups of population within the county that they realize were not counted during the last census. And that's what they're specifically targeting, and also through family members that are involved in schools or in other programs, and trying to contact certain populations that have no interest in being involved in the county. And we're just trying to do a more well-rounded effort, because they have talked about several volunteer efforts to make it happen, but there seems to be a real push to try to do as much as possible to get this counted where it is.
So this is just to ask. We could offer less if we wanted. It might feel it's more proportionate to.
That's what That's
We still have to buy her a new desk.
We don't have the money now.
Little desk in my garage.
Did you have an amount in mind?
Forget about those new chairs.
Well, I tend to agree with Tim that, or I think it was Tim that mentioned, everybody, the county's putting up $5,000. They're asking Idaho Springs. Our population isn't along those lines.
We have an aging population that may not have the money.
Well, and we also there's other things that we do proportionately based on what Georgetown, requires from the county. So, to me, these numbers are just kind of arbitrarily out there anyway. So.
Yeah, they resemble a suggestion.
Yeah, if you want to go by size, we're half the size of Idaho Springs. We're certainly the county. We've kind of leveled the playing field here. Under that, I'm not comfortable with that. I certainly think it's worth supporting because we don't have the proper funds as countywide to pursue this accurate census, but I'm going to come up with a figure, 2.
You said half.
I'm hopeful that you guys would choose to inspire the other jurisdictions to up their game.
We'd like you to inspire the county to up their game.
I was referring to the county as well. I'm happy to bring it back that, Georgetown says that they'll give $3,000 or $5,000, depending on if we want to increase our commitment.
How about 2 or 25?
Yeah, we're the 3 or 5.
I mean, 2,500, come on, that's half of what, if we're half of what Idaho Springs is, don't commit it $2,000, you look like, come on.
Well, if Idaho Springs did 10,000.
$500 in this town is worth I'll tell you what's the exchange rate on on what we'll get back in tax revenue relative to what we're gonna spend here.
I mean, directly,
You know,
it's $23 a head, but that's spread out among a lot.
I
of
just
different-
counted 13 people in here.
Not a lot of money.
It's more than 5,000.
So,
Somebody had 700 people, somebody do the math.
Just saying.
3 times 7.
We have what?
I don't know, do we have 700 people in this town?
We have 1,000 people in this town, 2,000 in Idaho Springs, 400 in Empire, 200 in,
Was it in here?
in,
I don't
You
believe
must have a cheat sheet.
so 3,600.
Short-term rental visitors, that we get more money.
Does it have the unincorporated part of Clear Creek in there?
It doesn't, but if Idaho Springs did 10,000, we did 5,000. You know, Silver Plume is 10% of us, and Empire would be, you know, 1,000. So Empire would be 1,000, Silver Plume 500, Idaho Springs 10,000, we'd be 5,000. That'd be approximately right, and you guys would do 7,000 for the unincorporated areas. Those would be more population-centered numbers.
I mean, I'm willing to bring back to the county that you guys think that we should contribute more. I think it's worth investing in this effort. But I do think that we should consider that Georgetown's population is going to increase by 50%, right around the same time that we're trying to count these people.
We may never get that built.
let's not say that. But many of those are gonna be second homes and they won't
Yeah,
be
that's not,
counted here.
yeah.
There's a whole bunch of,
Already know.
whole bunch of vacant
I think the
houses.
census will already be.
Then I
completed by the
was
time those are-
increased by that much too.
So,
Well, we have 47 minutes to go through.
okay.
But with the
So-
development,
Can we table this till next meeting?
and the other one.
So we can maybe
I moved to
gather
table.
some more information
Go count some people.
and,
Well, is that really gonna,
I don't think it changed anything.
I don't see that as changing.
well,
I
but
mean,
we
we already know population generally, so, I mean, certainly we could table it, but is there a really good reason
I
to?
think what it could show is how much more the county and how much more Idaho Springs is willing to come up with.
Well, the other alternative would be we pledge the half that people were actually comfortable with doing right now and wait on the other half, see what the other jurisdictions do if they bump their contributions.
We'll
And
match or something.
we're going into budget work sessions end of October, so does that seem like also a possibility? I've just tossed it out there.
I could deal with that. I could do half, I like 2,000 better, but I could do half with the thought that if Idaho Springs or the county, you know, the bigger populations are coming up with more than what's laid out here, that we would consider an additional.
Right.
Doesn't mean we have to, but we, you know, and put some pressure on them.
Seems fair.
Okay? Is everybody on board with that?
Sounds like a plan to me.
Okay.
George, I have a quick question on your key milestones. It says Census Day in red, April 1st. What, is that when the official count is?
Census Day.
Census Day, yeah, what does that mean?
It's
This is
the,
a process of
and
counting.
it falls on April Fool's Day, is that a double?
Yeah, what's going on there?
I'm not sure if I'm seeing what you're referring to. Is it on this? Right here. You know, this came from the Census Bureau.
You can never trust those guys.
It's gotta be, they probably got a national holiday for it. So, yeah.
They picked it first, it's nice.
April Fools.
Guess the government does have a sense of humor.
So, would anyone like to make a motion? Since it sounded like we came up with a consensus that, we'd like to pledge 2,500 now and discuss additional at a later date.
Sounds like a great motion, I'll make that motion.
I'll
even second.
I second.
Okay.
We are.
It's been moved and seconded.
Dinner is provided.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Would anybody like for me to put them on the complete count committee's email list?
Oh, boy, yeah. I got that sewer.
I would really.
I don't look at my email.
So, yeah, if you send it electronically, John's out.
Yeah.
So sweet.
Sure, I'll step up.
Yeah.
All right.
So you can count me twice.
And if there's donuts, let me know, so I can also
Dinner is provided.
He'll be right back.
Hey,
What about Ed? Is he recovered yet?
He's not back home yet. He wants to know about that floating fishing pier across the street.
Are we gonna put a party here over there? Across from the place?
okay.
Pontoon bridge to it.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank
All
you.
right, looks like we're on to staff reports. You want to kick that one off?
I guess the Sixth Street Alliance received a request from Excel. They have fixed a number of them this summer at different times, and there seems to be a larger issue. That actually 6 of them are
Shocked.
And appalled.
They asked that they be replaced, actually quite a majority of the lamp itself.
All of them.
What?
Yeah, so, or the majority of them are the problem, and if we would go ahead and do some, it'd be, I'm not to that final, that's why it's just a staff report item at this point.
Seriously, most of them, the majority of them need to be replaced, is that?
There's 6 out of 16, so,
That's only.
The entire fixture, the pole,
well, that's the part that I'm not 100% certain of. But that's what I had received from Excel. So I'm not buying that entirely, but as far as the circuits and the photo eyes and how they're coordinated with each other, they seem to have a problem. So, and I know that was a big issue when they were installed, be regarding whether it's the towns or Excel's, and we went through that over the last year. So now Excel is telling me this, that
Probably just
they're at a impasse because we've had to call them
They kind of,
a number of times this year because they'll fix them and then within a month they're a problem again. So,
just kind of.
need better information, but I'll let you know that that may be a significant amount.
more of that.
And there's a couple other steps in that process that would be difficult to go through, just because it was difficult to go through the first time. So I'm just kind of warning of coming attractions.
They have an off the
$69,000.
cuff
Replace them all.
price per fixture to,
Like 3 to 4 grand per fixture.
and that counts the
I'll
whole.
find it cheap.
Yeah.
But that's just
Or we could string those lights.
yeah, there you
Now,
go.
but I was thinking if we do end up replacing all of these, that we try and find something that gives us more light without throwing it upward.
Well, and then it was talked about at the promotions commission as well, and immediately had a response from Kevin, actually, that we should look for a more appropriate historical,
Reflector.
reflects the appropriate historical period, because these are historical, but they don't reflect what was here closer to the original.
Back in the day.
And that was the request right away, so even from that conversation, it tells you a couple things, but there's a problem right here in River City, so.
It's a good thing that we didn't go ahead and do the new gateway lights, since they probably wouldn't match the new 6th Street lights.
Or just put the gateway lights on 6th Street.
You could do that too.
Get some kerosene fountains for the gateway.
I'll go ahead and hang myself from one of the buildings right away.
Don't do that. done.
Building probably.
No, because then someone else will have to take up all your little committees, your subcommittees, so
Damn it.
stop
So,
it.
Said dinner provided.
so, okay,
Yeah,
something to chew on.
yes, that's just
I mean,
not great news. so.
it's a good thing we didn't promise the census 5,000.
Yeah.
Because what are we gonna fund next year?
George is coming back. He's coming back, he's
He'll be
asking
back.
for the rest. I know him.
The Glenelg Pass Road is
Yeah, my brother's a
Jerry's
citizen.
issue.
Okay.
What's that?
What'd you say? I'm sorry.
Guanella Pass Road is the next
We're moving
item,
Yeah.
and Jerry has some information.
Short report,
Thanks,
the
George.
board mostly, I think,
Thank you, guys.
the board mostly is aware of this issue, the Gwinnett Pass Road. A portion of that road that previously was owned by the Forest Service is in town. And as background, the town's maintenance of town streets, reaching back to kind of remember, it stopped short of the town boundary. The county typically, others here know better than I do, has turned around. There's a sort of easy place to turn around. I've driven up a bunch of times. It's hard for me to know which switchback it is that's easier to turn around at. But historically, there's been kind of a informal division of maintenance at some point. So there's a couple of layers to this. There's maintenance of the road and there's ownership. The Forest Service has said, look, we don't want to own this road. It's on Forest Service property, but it's not our road, and we don't want to own it. They, over the last several years, I've corresponded with Bob Lenthal, the county attorney, and just this last week, or 2 days ago, last week, he emailed me and said that the county has received an easement deed from the Forest Service for the portion that's in the county. And they have told him that they're happy to, Forest Service is happy to give the town an easement deed to the portion of the road that's in town. Apparently, when it was built, the forest acquired easement land or easement rights that they own as a title matter. Now, the town, of course, owns all of its other roads in town just because you own your own roads, but this is an exception that you don't own. So you have some choices, what those are. You could certainly just accept easement deed from the forest, now you own the road. That doesn't mean necessarily you changed your approach on maintenance. I'm not sure, frankly, that ownership drives what you do on maintenance. I don't think maintenance drives what you do on ownership. It never has. The part of me that thinks that a town road that is in town ought to be owned by the town leads me to think that you should own it. You have to let CIRSA know it's on your road grid, and if there's a dangerous condition causing an accident, CIRSA's there for you. Probably you get named anyhow, even though it's a Forest Service underlying ownership, it's a road in town. If I'm a plaintiff, I don't see a big difference there. So part of me says, let's clean up the title issues here and at least own it. But the underlying, okay, who's going to maintain this at some expense on those first couple of turnarounds when the XL trucks go up to haul that stuff up Cabin Creek, they shortcut over those switchbacks and injure them, and then there's damage. The fact that you own it would mean it's your problem. I suspect that Forest Service is probably not going to fix it anyhow. So I'm not giving you clear direction other than to say, I don't see a huge downside to just clearing up the title issue. But I think that on an ongoing basis, the real issue for you to, at some point, come to grips with, and the can has been kicked down the road with no pejorative intent, just haven't had to come to grips with, well, what do we do about maintenance? Do we do an IGA with the county and kind of memorialize the informal arrangement that's always been true or not? So I see two sets of issues here. One is title, and I just am telling you that the town owning that road doesn't materially increase your liability exposure because I think they already have it. The real cost involved here is maintenance of that segment that you manage to not have to maintain.
Would CDOT have a role in this?
I don't, I.
CDOT? Yeah.
No.
Okay.
It's a number as a county road, right, up over the pass, so it's not a.
Let me ask you this, I know that sometimes we ask other entities to get involved, like we've asked Denver Water to fix a valve out here. Would CDOT ever get involved in some contract?
On a county road, no.
Okay.
Just a county.
Just because they have the equipment and the know-how and.
But the county is a different entity, and I think they would be willing to get involved in that.
Oh, okay.
They have to go over to maintain their stuff anyway, and I know, I don't know what they've done in the last 5 or 6 years, but prior to that it was always maintained in there by the county. I would think that it wouldn't be hard to do an IGA, and I think one of the bargaining chips we could do is to allow them to claim that portion that's in the town on their HUTF, and we not claim it on HUTF. And that would give them the HUTF.
Give them those miles to that segment. I'm happy to, I think that's productive. I mean, honestly, we've gone around in the title, but the more I've thought about it, the more I've felt that these two things don't have to be linked. You know, the title, the fact that you've got title doesn't, they really don't drive each other. And the title is kind of easier. I think Forest Service in the mode of disposing of these remnant things, you might as well own it. I'm happy to communicate back to Bob Leffler and ask him to get me in touch with whoever, I think it's Jeff Bellin, he says, at FHWA, and talk about an easement deed, probably just in the same form that they've used for the county, but at the same time, open up, if you're willing, open up the discussion with them to say, we'd like now to talk about maintenance. County has been maintaining, county's been very grateful for that. We think maybe it's time to memorialize that arrangement, so it's no longer informal. And we'd like the commissioners to consider that if we do memorialize it, that we recognize that that's at a cost to the county, and the county could claim that part of the agreement could be that it's claimed for HUTF, and see what their response is. Is that?
Yeah.
I think it's maybe time to move this one along, because it'll just sit there unaddressed forever. Okay.
Well, and it doesn't make sense to me to have possibly different levels of maintenance.
Yeah.
You know, our section versus theirs. It just seems you get better product if you have one entity doing all of it.
I think so.
I think that the county has been working on changing some of their maintenance classifications. I'm not sure that they would do that because of Cabin Creek, if they would lower the maintenance classification on that road. It always has been a primary road, and I don't think they would lower that because of Cabin Creek, so, but just so you know, they have been working on
that.
They actually adopted that
Oh, they did adopt it?
last week.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
So that's easy to look up.
yeah.
Am I right in thinking that the town's maintenance, or the sort of the handoff point that has historically been the case, has been inside town, but the town has kind of maintained a portion of this segment, and so the handoff point is just easier for the county plows to turn around at a certain point that isn't the entire Guanella Pass Road segment that's inside town. Is that true?
I know when I was working that, if you go up Rose to the stop sign and turn to go up in the middle of that first switchback, there's that house back there. We pretty much, county would pretty much go to there and kind of clean the road off a little bit.
Okay.
And maybe, you know, to turn around, they might clean up down to Rose.
Okay.
But that was about it. They did come into the town's jurisdiction.
part of the IGA probably needs to be, here's where, you know, here's your, if we're gonna agree on maintenance obligation, here's where it goes to, and then our public works knows where the handoff should be.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get the conversation
And
started.
If we were, I don't want to speak for you, I'm sorry, I'm probably out of turn, but a good turnaround, a good handoff point would be the intersection of Rose and Grinnell Pass.
Okay. Okay. All right, good.
Because the town would do up second, right?
And then take a left, right?
Okay, good. I'll get the conversation started, report back to you, it'll be on another agenda for discussion, but I appreciate being able to kind of move this one along and clear up that long-standing title problem. Terrific, thank you.
Thank you. Town hall.
This is a larger discussion.
The ceiling's falling.
Now that the bell tower's done, and we're going to have a discussion at some point regarding the long-term use of this building, but this is more to have the architects come back, and they had done a design, or at least talked about regarding the design for the foundation for this building. And that's going to be part of the long-term discussion, is do we want this as our long-term town hall? Because if we would end up doing the foundation, there would probably be a situation where three of us in this room would have, more than three, three of us at least in this room would have to relocate for a time period, which would be difficult. It'd be difficult for the community and be all kinds of different things. So, but the discussion to at least know what, you know, they have their report regarding the foundation or whether it's worth it. And then it's going to need to be a general, little longer discussion amongst the board. Is this where we want town hall to be? We have issues both with our meeting room, just ADA issues and other things that go along with that. Do we expand this building to meet those needs? We have other discussions amongst staff regarding the certain things about the viability of this building, but, and, you know, the restrooms downstairs and the restrooms for employees and those type of things, but, and also, when, not if, another person is ever added to the staff, how is that gonna work? So those are more of the general topics, but for right now, what I would like to do is ask if it's all right with y'all to invite the architects to come speak at a future board meeting to at least discuss what it will take to do the next step in the project to keeping this building, which is a fantastic old building.
Except for the bottom step.
That's just for you, Keith. That's all that's
On the foundation,
But
More the bottom step.
to have that discussion, so.
Great roof, we'll have a great roof.
We're gonna have a great roof.
Still,
But, so, does that give you a genesis of the discussion of what they have?
yeah.
Yep.
And it's not trying to push anything, it's just, it's gonna come up, and especially regarding the historical grant to do the foundation, which they say is the next thing to do, that's gonna be a major task just to have it available to do, not the project itself. Unless we want to be on stilts and have everybody climb in a certain way. I was already told that's not
How about
possible.
Maui?
so.
We make the town hall in Maui.
Yeah.
Every 2 weeks we go out there.
You know,
Do we get mileage
we
reimbursement for
just need it's
that
all paid.
So is that okay to have the architect come and talk for
one?
you?
Yes.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
Interesting.
Great. Okay, town vehicles.
finally, we're gonna get town vehicles. Everybody gets a town.
Yeah, I got a truck.
Don't you got a truck? I didn't get mine yet, but I'm sure it's coming.
That LeBaron is
The bear
coming.
Down the line. So, Kent, what can you tell us?
Okay, as part, we did have, and we'll have, our employee who does some of the maintenance on the vehicles come to the next meeting if you agree with this, procedure which we try to pursue. We have one, our second, number 2 plow truck is, DOA right now.
It's not gonna snow today.
Not gonna snow today, which is good. But as part of that, as part of working with that, we were contacted, or actually we contacted them, in discussions between Mary and myself, regarding the possibility of a refinancing, if that would allow us the opportunity to have more money available to obtain a couple different vehicles.
Refinancing which?
Refinancing 2 different debt issues that would allow us to have, and what they came back with after we described what we were trying to accomplish, what they came back with is one of our notes, we're not able to refinance it as far as the rate, but the time would be extended on it.
What's the current rate?
4.5%, but we're not allowed to refinance it for another 5 years. So,
Seems high.
and then the other, 4.5% is high, because on the other issue, which was 5.25% on a CWCB note, one of them, the estimate would be at 3.25. This is obviously government financing, so it's, different rules than what you guys get to play with personally, but, so it would lower it 2 points. Now, our payment would end up to be within hundreds of dollars of what it is currently. It would be about the same payment. It would just be extended out for 5 additional years. The CWCB note would be extended 3 years. But that would allow us to have around $150,000, obviously with financial folks, it's an estimate. They would have to come with a real issue to you to do more. But $150,000 would allow us to do 3 different vehicles. One, a really good plow vehicle to be the number 2 plow vehicle. 2, and part of it's the asphalt zipper, part of it's other things, is a front end loader, a larger machine rather than the 2 backhoes we have. You guys, that was a guess at the beginning when we got the asphalt zipper, but there's lots of other issues where the 2 backhoes they're not the right vehicle for the job. And then as far as a parks vehicle, which the parks vehicle right now, what we're using as a parks vehicle, I will not describe the particular problem in an open meeting to you, what's happening of how to start the vehicle, which is not a good situation. But, we have a number of vehicles in our inventory that are very poor. We've replaced, we've been able to replace a couple of them over the last couple of years, but we are both water and wastewater and road and bridge as far as the vehicles are involved, and then I just mentioned the parks vehicle. This isn't the end of our concerns regarding vehicles, but this will help tremendously. And that's the basic description of how we could get something accomplished in a very short time frame. So I'll stand for questions, but also at the end of this is asking for basic general direction, saying, is that a good idea? Is that a bad idea? Don't look that route. But the refinancing allows us to accomplish something that will not impinge our budget directly, and then gives us about 5 years to allow us, so we could do a real refinancing at that time, as far as the number of years. Now, you never know what interest rates are going to do, but those 2 things seems like an opportunity, but you guys could tell me different. That'd be fine.
So the vehicles that are in bad shape,
Yes, sir.
there's like probably 5 of them, right? About.
Yes.
Could we pool those together and trade those in against the 150 that we refinance for?
We can always trade vehicles. But I don't know, I guess I don't know what the exact thing you're,
Just saying, if maybe that'll make it easier for us to acquire more vehicles if we could trade some of these dogs in. I don't know what you got, but, if you've got some things that are, or if you can pool them together, I don't know if that's,
well, the one thing we were able to do earlier this year was we did pick up a vehicle that Ryan's using from Roller Auction, and that's worked out real well. But getting an auction vehicle is hit or miss.
Sure.
Obviously. The couple of vehicles that we have,
$100 a piece.
I would ask for.
That's great.
so you still have the pickup? You still have the Chevy pickup?
Old Blue,
Yeah.
the big blue plow
Got
truck.
that too?
Oh, yeah, we still drive that.
It's a historic town.
It is a historic vehicle.
And
The
the
silver
silver pickup.
pickup,
The silver pickup is the one that is dead.
What's the
but
matter?
the other silver
The engine
pickup.
blew
Oh, the other silver
The
pickup?
other, the water and wastewater silver pickup.
Okay.
Don't we find
I'm just saying, if you could like trade those in like on a cumulative basis, just to help the effort. But I think the refinancing thing's a great idea. Yeah, extend 5 years, let's get the money and get us some real vehicles, but I just wondered if maybe trading them might help the effort.
It would be a scrap deal.
Probably.
They're pretty bad.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well.
Even put them all together.
You look over there.
So if
We promised it then.
if something else comes up outside of this vehicle replacement, where some magic needs to be created, since we seem to be on the short end of a good cash pocket here, do we have, and you don't have to say what it is, but do we have something else up our sleeve if it's a ban?
Actually, our cash balance is improving considerably over the last couple of years, and this year it is as well, and our sales tax continues to do well. So our cash reserves are doing better. So as far as the other things that could happen, that's one thing that's strengthening our position, not getting worse. As far as another refinancing opportunity or something else that could occur, I don't have anything immediately in mind because we asked them to look at several of our note issues, the possibility of refinancing. And there was either limitations or we're unable to on a couple different ones that would have made it a much better deal to refinance. But really, these were the two that were the ability were to do this year, as far as the timing. So no, I don't have a better answer as far as another creative solution.
Well, I'm just wondering, like, the shoe drops next month after we've said yes on this, then do we have another direction to take for the next issue?
The next thing, there's always a next thing that comes up.
Well, and I know that, but this just sounds like it's.
It sort of seems like we're taking out another credit card to pay the old credit card off.
Well,
But at a better interest rate. See, this is like opening that envelope that they're giving you 2 years at 0%.
Awesome.
And you pay the fee to transfer your balance,
Right.
you know, so.
actually, refinancing opportunities I've been able to do them in a couple other communities, and they've actually, it does help the community do those refinancing opportunities because the interest rates have dropped lower.
And 2 points is huge. I mean, you know, even though, so.
And you have a big need on equipment that's immediate.
Right.
So it's either that or you pay the cash reserves, which are finally getting better after a lot of years.
I think it sounds like a good idea to do the refinance.
And trust me,
I
if
do
you're
too.
plowing the streets and you're using a really bad truck, how many of you have ever done that? See? Did you love it? Did you love it? Did you say, boy, I'm earning my buck today? No.
But you have to get some sound.
So we'll have materials to be sent to you at the next meeting, and you can ask additional questions regarding the refinancing at that time. I just wanted to get a general direction first before proceeding.
Okay.
Transfer of ownership from marijuana dispensaries. Actually, this is Jennifer's topic.
Go staff.
I'm trying to remember what we were gonna ask them.
Doesn't there need to be a code change?
Oh,
Jared, maybe you?
well,
Yeah, we have, the board has the right to grant renewals and transfers of marijuana licenses, but we don't have a transfer fee in the fee schedule. We've got all the other fees for renewals, new licenses, et cetera. And Jennifer was asked about a transfer, and she and I figured out what to do for that one circumstance, but we believe it's appropriate to put a transfer fee into the fee schedule, and we'll bring it forward to you by a resolution as how you revise your fee schedule. But the kind of policy consideration for you is, for a new license, it's a bigger number, it's 2,000. For a renewal, it's
either 700 or 750.
yeah, which understanding, you've gone through the work of vetting a new applicant for a new license, that takes more time. For a renewal, you already know all of that, and it's just a renewal. For a transfer, you're transferring, even though it's an existing license, you're transferring it to someone that often you don't know, and that you do have to vet and take to CBI and do all of that. So,
They transferred 2,000.
does that mean that the number should be closer to a new license number or to a renewal number? And
No, if you've got to do all the footwork and the groundwork in order to vet these guys, make sure that they're good, it should be just as much as a new.
typically, I think
And the
that's
liquor
the
licenses
case.
are like that, the transfers are the same as.
Yeah.
They are the same as
Yeah.
you?
There's a correlation.
Well, there you go.
That makes sense to us, but it's kind of a little bit of a policy call for you. So when we revise the fee chart, or the fee code, or the fee chart that you adopt regularly by resolution, we'll plug in a transfer fee
That's dream
for MJ licenses.
So we haven't
Okay.
transferred one yet?
future thing.
It's-
Not yet.
Not
Okay.
But it's
It's
on the horizon.
on the horizon. So we'll, probably, if we do that by resolution, so we can probably get that in
Yes.
place, next.
Is that fee competitive in the market? I mean, are we?
Yeah, that's a reasonable fee. There are other cities that, charge more, sort of Synchak's kind of thing, but I don't think Georgetown used their business in that way.
Got it.
More like a liquor license, kind of, it's a business that's legal in town, we've allowed it to exist, and
I certainly want to encourage your
Yeah.
business to come.
yeah, and so I think you don't punish them. You treat them like you would treat, I think, a liquor license. Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. The Dr. Cog, Proposition 23, since I'm not going to be at the meeting, Keith was considering going, he's my alternate. However, he's got a day full of stuff, and so he's not going to be able to be at that meeting where they will be calling a vote. We can still discuss it if you'd like, but at this point, neither of us are going to be able to be at the meeting, so it's kind of a moot. The Dr. Cog board meeting, which is on the 18th of September, it's the third Wednesday.
Got it.
So,
6:30 p.m.
I can't do it because I got trivia.
well, and it's not like we have appointed like a second alternative.
Right.
It's,
Well, I was going to volunteer again.
I appreciate that willingness to serve, but I don't think, I mean, we can still.
Since y'all gave such a rousing review.
So, as far as I'm concerned, we can scratch that off. Okay. Tuition reimbursement for water sewer operator Eric Trujillo. We talked about it a little bit last meeting, and do we have,
We don't have an example of an agreement before.
Okay.
but
No, probably and Kent and I talked about this a little this afternoon. We think probably the structure really is a reimbursement arrangement. There was some discussion at the last time about the town paying the school directly, but I'm really going to recommend that because you're not the student, and that creates a contractual relationship with a third party that really you don't have control over and shouldn't. And you certainly want to support your employees, and I heard that loud and clear last time. But the recommendation we have is that it be on a reimbursement basis for tuition fees actually incurred. The timing, do we have time to create an agreement and put it in the next board meeting?
Yes.
Agenda? That's what I'd like to do. And the policy issues beyond just okay, now we know it's reimbursement as opposed to advancing money to some third party. But the other policy issue is, all right, if you leave employment, because the whole point is that you improve the abilities of the employee, that's also good for the town. In other words, you don't have an obligation to pay for someone's tuition otherwise. A sort of sliding scale of reimbursement back to the town if the employee leaves within a year or 2 years or 3 years. And I'll create a schedule for that, but that's, as you can appreciate, a subjective and kind of policy decision for you to make. How long is the scale, and I'll give you sort of a chart or a mechanism to think about how you want to make the policy choice around that.
can it be done kind of like a vesting arrangement, so percentage?
Sure, yeah, the longer you stay, the less you then have to repay if you leave, is kind of how those work.
Okay.
I've done them for police officers when you hire someone that's got to go to the post-training, and then they get all the post-training, and then the real question is how long you're going to stay. And if you stay long enough, then you never have to reimburse the community for what it advanced to you for the tuition. So I can set it up in that way, and then you can make some policy choices about, how long do you need to stay until you've covered 100%. Kind of what's the sliding scale. I'll set it up so you can then just plug in numbers. If that works for you.
Yeah, no, that's great.
That's more industry standard is the reimbursement. And then just take it to that next step. He gets reimbursed, or any employee gets reimbursed, and usually then they can flip that money into the next semester. So they're really only putting out that first semester, and then they get a bonus when they're done, kind of thing.
Exactly.
So, that way they're passing, and we're not paying for not getting.
I'll structure such an agreement and then we'll do the packet next time.
Alrighty. And then on your table, you had a spreadsheet on the Georgetown Police Department activity report. That's just informational.
Where are the bear incidents?
The wildlife incidents down at the bottom.
The animal calls.
Well, that sounds like Party Central.
Yeah.
There could be,
I didn't know if
on
that
the
was
fishing
bears.
deck.
Couple of mine.
So Kent has a couple more things.
The LLC with Bighorn we received, and everything's up to, they've finished out that requirement.
And they did the 800.
Yes, they did, sir.
The 865?
Wow.
Very good.
You have the eyes on that, Jerry?
I was excited about it.
That's good stuff.
How could you keep that to yourself the whole time?
Yeah, this whole meeting.
You were like, you are a cool cucumber, I gotta tell you.
He's like sitting on his hands trying not to say.
What do they heard about the LOC?
Always nice to have money.
I bet we'll be getting a notice of increase in price for certain attorneys.
That'd be great. I hadn't thought about that.
That was a rush.
Thank you. Nice.
So,
Have you seen any more building permits applications from them now that that has?
No, we have one more planning process to do.
Okay.
And have sent that to whoever person's kind of sending it to the right people of their people to do. The hotel, the dirt work for the hotel started this week. They're planning on Monday next week to have concrete. We'll see if they get that up to start doing concrete. The brewery's obviously well underway. The Gateway project is moving apace. They will be done within a few short weeks, so, and I'm
Looks good.
not taking, it's, the asphalt, the second asphalt layer, not flavor, layer will be, next week. The first and second lifts, they have a little short section. If you haven't driven that, it's a little further than you can see, because of the water main project. That will be done next week as well. The concrete, they're gonna be trying to get as much of that done this week as possible, so. The water main project will be about 3 weeks to finish. They'll have another week, week and a half for the rest of the remainder in the parking lot of the apartments. They're actually off the road now, thank goodness. It wasn't gonna cause a delay for the Gateway project. And then, they will move up to between 6th and 7th and do that portion. So, they have about a 3-week schedule, we'll see if they can hold that. That's one's been really tough to, as far as the resources they've put to finishing it. The water and wastewater treatment project will be finished in the next, by September 30th. So, they were hoping to be done by September 13th, that's not gonna happen. The other blowers are gonna be connected today, and they're gonna be working on it. Tomorrow night, there'll be a shutdown of the plant for a few hours while they do some of the electrical work for the UPS.
So we should flush.
Public meeting. Public meeting.
I said nothing bad.
And so that's the status of those projects currently, or at least the very thumbnail schedule.
So has the asphalt zipper been used?
Actually, they were using it today on Main Street, just north of 15th, and they have done it
Look good.
for a couple strips. I don't know, I didn't get to go down there at the end of the day, see how far they went.
We got a couple hundred feet or something.
Wonderful. So, anybody have anything else? Okay. Who would like to make a motion
I'll
to
make that
adjourn?
motion. I make your motion.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, everyone.